ਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣਾ ਸੈਟਲਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਹਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਹਰ ਸਾਲ ਬਾਹਰ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਲਈ ਪਹੁੰਚਦੇ ਹਨ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਨ 'ਚ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਕੁ ਜਿਗਿਆਸਾ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬਾਹਰ ਆ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਉਜਲਾ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਬਣਾਉਣ, ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਤਿਆਰ ਹਨ। ਜ਼ਾਹਿਰ ਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਪਰਮਾਨੈਂਟ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਅਲੱਗਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿਨ ਰਾਤ ਲਗਾ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਦਾ ਸਟੇਟਸ ਹਾਸਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਸੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੇ ਹੀ ਨਾਇਆਗਰਾ ਕਾਲਜ ਵਿੱਚ 50 ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਉੱਪਰ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀਆਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸੁਪਨਾ ਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਈ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ। ਹਾਲ ਹੀ 'ਚ ਖਬਰ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਨਾਇਆਗਰਾ ਕਾਲਜ ਦੇ ਕੁਝ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਲਜ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਹੀ ਕੇਸ ਦਰਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੋਰਸ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ, ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ। ਪਰ ਹਾਲ ਹੀ 'ਚ ਖਬਰ ਮਿਲੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਡਿਨਾਈ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਗਏ। ਇਸੇ ਸਿਲਸਿਲੇ 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੇ ਦੋ ਲਾਇਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਦੋ ਵਕੀਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਜੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਹਨ ਰਵੀ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੀਵਨ, ਜੋ ਕਿ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੀ ਹੀ ਲਾਅ ਫਰਮ ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। Hello Ravi, hello Stephen, how are you doing today?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you so much, and thank you so much for joining us over the phone. I know you guys had a very busy schedule, but thank you so much, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk to you about this case.
Our pleasure.
Okay, so I'd like to start with the first question: that what is this whole case all about?
Well, basically the allegation, this is Ravi speaking, the allegation is basically that Niagara College, which is a community college, created a program and marketed it for international students. And basically the end result of this program was supposed to be that you were going to get a 3-year open work permit. So the allegation is that they improperly designed this program and implemented it such that number of courses ended up being distance learning. And this runs against Citizenship and Immigration Canada's rule, which says that they're not supposed to have any distance learning component in order to get the 3-year open work permit upon graduation.
Okay. So when did you first hear about the case itself?
Oh, well, I started seeing it in my office many months ago. There were students initially I saw because I practice immigration law. So I saw students who were getting their work permits on the basis of completing this program, because it was an interesting program when I first learned of it, because it was basically a program that was a transfer program. So in other words, if you had a bachelor's degree from India, let's say, and then let's say you had another community college diploma that was only a 1-year diploma course, in that case, if you applied for your work permit after graduating from the 1-year diploma course, then you would only get a 1-year open work permit. But of course, the students, once they arrived here, they realized that it was important to get a 3-year work permit, because with a 3-year work permit, then you had a better chance of qualifying, getting Canadian work experience, applying for immigration, and then completing the whole process of getting your immigration, your permanent residence, while in Canada. So this college designed this program, I think, to accept the credit from the other college, and also to accept some of the, previous Indian education. And then the program was basically a 4-month program, at the end of which they would get a 2-year diploma, which would then enable them to get a 3-year open work permit.
So this program was particularly designed just for the international students?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say why they designed it. They certainly appear to have marketed it that way. So the allegation is that they marketed it towards these students, but didn't take enough care when, answering questions of the students who asked, is this a problem that it's a distance learning course? And then the allegation is that the college didn't properly advise them that it could very well be a problem. Because, of course, there were students that actually received the work permits after graduating from the program, and then immigration investigated the program further and decided, no, it's distance learning, and that runs against, our policy, which is that it's not supposed to have a distance learning component.
So when I was asking you, when did you first hear about the case? So students started approaching the law firms in 2016 or 2014 or before that?
No, we didn't start seeing refusals because what happened is the program's been running for a while, and
Okay.
we didn't see any refusals until relatively recently. So
Okay.
several batches of students passed from the program and got their work permits, and then all of a sudden, we started to see, several refusals, and I represent over 50 students now, and I'm trying to help them. The first attempt was to sort of try to communicate with the immigration department and say that the students had been innocent and were victims in this whole thing. And then the second approach has been to try to get work permits based on a humanitarian basis. And so we're in the process of doing that now. We've already started filing some of them, and we have many more that we still have to file. But we're in the process of this. So we're hopeful that the immigration department will issue work permits on the basis of the humanitarian aspect of the case, because the students, in my mind, should have been able to rely on on what was told to them,
Right.
what we're alleging the community college said to them.
So I would like to ask you, as you just mentioned that you're trying to get them work permits on the humanitarian basis. So what's the status now? Where are these students right now, and what status do they have right now? Have you been able to get them work permit at all? Has anybody gotten it so far? Has anybody returned to their home country?
Some have returned to their home country. Some of them are currently awaiting a decision because the case was forwarded to a local office that is investigating. And so some of them are still waiting for a decision from the investigating office, which is the local office. Some of them have received refusals. Some are being asked for more information. So they're all at various stages. We actually were waiting to apply for the humanitarian-based work permit. So now that the class action has been filed, we wanted to be able to mention to the officers that we wanted to give them a full picture of what was happening. So now that the class action's filed, we have started to file some of them, and we anticipate filing a few dozen more in the next few weeks.
So could Stephen highlight a little bit more about the class action suit and how it's going to go, and also what the $50 million they're asking for?
Right. So this is right now, it's a proposed class proceeding. There are two named plaintiffs who are the representative plaintiffs, and they represent all students who were enrolled at the college over the last several semesters. The claim, the $50 million claim, is advanced on behalf of all class members. There's also a punitive damages claim for $5 million. In terms of the damages that are sought, basically the students are seeking monetary compensation for the upheaval and the stress and the emotional toll this has put on them, as well as their actual hard costs in terms of the tuition that they paid for. They paid significant sums of money to attend the Niagara College, much more than domestic students. They're seeking compensation associated with the lost opportunity, the loss of workplace opportunities. Their entrances in the workplace are now going to be delayed. They will likely have to forego the Canadian workplace experience and the future opportunities for potentially for citizenship in the future. Some have had to go back to their home countries, and there are costs associated with that, as well as costs associated with the visas and the lawyers. The costs are very significant, and most important at the end of the day is the upheaval. And you have these vulnerable students, many of whom speak English as a second language. They came to Canada seeking an opportunity. They gave up opportunities back in their home countries. And they even gave up the potential for one-year work permits, which they may have been able to access after completing their first year of studies here in Canada. So they spent all sorts of money to be here, to do their first year of studies. And then at that point, they were told and learned, some of them within a week or 2 or 3 weeks, that there was this even greater opportunity to get these 3-year work permits. And they therefore applied to Niagara College, enrolled in Niagara College, thought they were going to end up with a 3-year work permit. and only in the last few months have learned that that's not the case and have been uprooted, and some have gone, like I said, have gone back to their home country, and some are here right now just trying to figure out what to do with their lives.
If you talk about Niagara College has 4 campuses right now. They have one is made of the mist, one is on Niagara on the Lake, one is in Welland, Ontario, and one is in Taif, Saudi Arabia. They have a graduation rate of 50,000 students. They hire almost 291 faculty members, around 224 support staff, and around 89 administrative members. So considering the large scale of this college, I mean, after hearing about this lawsuit, have you gotten any response from the college so far?
We don't yet have a response. The claim was issued last week. It was served on the college last week. We expect to hear from them probably through their counsel within the next few days or so, and at that point we'll figure out what the next steps are going to be.
And do you think, apart from Niagara College, there are other colleges in Canada right now that are trying to abuse these international students?
Well, I don't know if they're trying to abuse them, but I mean, I think that the message that I'd like to get out is that community colleges in particular, that are not private colleges, that receive public funding through our tax dollars, need to be extraordinarily vigilant when designing their programs. So what that means is, if they have a question about whether or not the program is distance learning or not, then I think the best possible advice that they can get is the advice of a qualified immigration lawyer who can interpret legislation and can interpret the guidance that is provided by the government. And I think once that interpretation is given, I think the colleges should all err on the side of caution. So they should all be extraordinarily conservative when interpreting federal immigration law, number one. And number two, they are not allowed to give immigration law advice. And it's been that way for several years now. In the past, it was perfectly fine for international student advisors to advise students on how to get work permits after graduating. But it's been several years now that there's been a rule change, and the government has not been allowed to do that. And the colleges have not been allowed to do that. So I think that they have to be careful in designing their programs. They have to be very careful in advising students. And I think that, right now, any community college in Canada that has a distance learning program, targeted to foreign students should seriously think about getting rid of that program and basically requiring that all students be taking their classes, in person, in class.
After talking to several students, would you think that the administration of the college or the people who deal with international students, were they not aware of what they're telling students? Do you think they did it deliberately to grab more students, or do you think it was a genuine mistake?
Well, I mean, there may have been, I'm speculating here to a certain extent, but some people may have been immigration consultants who are not lawyers, who were relying on the fact that immigration had issued work permits in the past to graduates of this program. So some of it might have been that. The administrators themselves, I'm not sure. I don't think I can comment on whether or not it was willful, but I do think that there wasn't the diligence that should have been exercised.
So do you also consider that immigration consultants in some countries could be at fault too, because they are giving the wrong information? The first-hand information is wrong?
Well, I think to the extent, I mean, this is the problem I have generally with immigration consultants. I'm not saying that all of them are bad. Some of them, try very hard to do a good job. But at the end of the day, I would never go to someone for an operation if they weren't a doctor. In this country, it's very difficult to get into law school. And, usually you have to have a bachelor's degree, then you have to do your law degree. That can normally take about 7 years for that whole process. And then you have to do what's called articling, which is the internship. That's another year. Then you have to write the bar admissions course, which can be another few months. So overall, we're talking about over 8 years of training. and in terms of higher education. So, I just don't. The harm I've seen it's very difficult for immigration lawyers to come out and talk about this because it looks like we're being self-serving, as if we're trying to just corner the market. But at the same time, it's not right for us to stay silent when, if I look at the cases in my office, once in a while, maybe once every year or two, I see a lawyer who made a mistake. But pretty regularly, I'd say 4 or 5 times a week, I see mistakes by immigration consultants. I see immigration consultants who promised one thing and didn't deliver, who said that they were going to guarantee a certain result, who promised money back, who, said they filed something but never did, who refused to provide a copy of the person's application. These are things that lawyers just, we can't do this kind of stuff or they'll take our license away. So I just think that there's just a different, and again, in something like this, what I think is it's more a matter of they see what works as opposed to really investigating what the law is and what's appropriate from a real legal analysis perspective, right? So it could be that's what was going on. But you see, if a lawyer was tasked with that kind of situation, the lawyer might say, look, in practice, this is what I'm noticing, but I want to tell you the technical rule is that there's no distance learning. And so there's a real risk if you want to proceed. That's the kind of way a lawyer handles it versus, maybe someone who's not a lawyer.
If I could just add, the consultants, whether they are internal people at the college or agents of the college, they were passing on a message, and the message was clear. The message was that enroll in this program and you'll qualify for these 3-year permits. And that was the message. That was the message that Niagara College was promoting, and it was a simple message, and it was one that these students relied upon because these permits were and are highly desirable. So at the end of the day, it comes back to the college. They were the ones were promoting this program and this promise to the students.
And that's the allegation, right? This is what the allegation is that this was a misleading message. This program may have been designed specifically to attract foreign students who pay higher tuition fees, and many of them, because students all talk to each other. And so, when they realized they could get a 3-year open work permit, a lot of them who were sitting there with only a 1-year, diploma that they had finished, found this program quite attractive. And so many of them, ended up traveling en masse to go to Welland because there was one course that had to be completed in class, and then the others could be done online. So.
Right. So,
think about
Stephen and Ravi, I have a question for both of you. Since you must have spoken to a lot of students, a lot of international students, as Stephen mentioned that they're emotionally also drained that way, how was the response? How emotionally drained they are? What were they sharing when they were sharing the story with you?
Well, I can speak to that because I've seen many of them. I've seen clients basically break down crying in my office because, as you know, and as your viewers will know, in Indian culture, the parents give everything to their children to sort of study, right? So many of the parents, one student told me about how his mother even sold her gold, sold the last thing that she had so that her son could come here for a better life. So, it's not just about money. This is something that's really affected them. Some of them have been, have told me about being suicidal. Some of them have talked about how can they go home, and face this kind of shame. So it's been extraordinarily difficult for them because and they feel, misled if you can't rely on, basically some of our most reputable, are supposed to be most reputable institutions in Canada, then who can you rely on? And I look at it as it's amazing to me the level of due diligence that was exercised by the students. Not only did they, think about, well, wait a minute, like, is this distance learning thing a problem? They went to the extraordinary effort of even, writing directly in some cases to the college to get that clarification from them. I mean, that's very unusual when people come to a foreign country to even learn that this could be a bar, that this could be a problem to getting their work permit.
Right.
That's a high level of sophistication that they were aware of this, because it's a relatively obscure rule, and that they learned of it, that they tried to get the answer, that they saw that other students had passed through the program and received their work permit. So again, that's a bit of the fault of the immigration department too, right? Because it wasn't being very consistent. So these are students that exercise every due diligence possible, and now they feel really let down by the government. They feel let down by the college, and they're very emotionally distraught.
Okay. And as you mentioned that some of the students have returned to their home countries, do you think if this case is somehow during the course of the case, they could be called back? Is there anybody filing the case from their home country?
Yeah. So the two representative plaintiffs, the named plaintiffs, they're in the country, and they represent the class. They're here. They're the only ones that would be actively involved in the ongoing litigation, at least until the proceeding is certified. In Ontario and in Canada, the way it works is you file a class action, and the first step is to have the claim certified. And one aspect of the certification is to have the named representative plaintiffs actually declared by the court as the representatives of the class. So they're here. They'll be here for the litigation. As far as class members who aren't currently here, there's plenty of opportunity for them to contact our offices and be part of the group. They're inherently members of the group just by the fact that they were students at the college. They don't actually have to be here to be part of the ongoing claim.
If the case is successful at the end of the students, do you think the students who have left the country would be allowed back, or is there a way for them to come back?
Well, this is why I've been bringing it to the attention of the press, a few weeks ago when I held a press conference about this issue. I want the country to sort of be aware of this problem, because I think it will help when I make the request for the humanitarian-based work permits. But, individuals have to decide on their own what they want to do. Some may decide that they would like to be part of the class action, but they're going to move on with their life, and they're going to try to mitigate their damages, and they're going to, maybe go to Australia or go back home and try to find a job or whatever. And some still have the dream of being here in Canada. And for those people who want to hire me for that, I have been, discounting my rates and basically applying for humanitarian-based work permits for those students. And I've been using the press clippings, et cetera, to try to bolster their applications by showing that, they were true victims here. And even if they technically don't qualify because it was distance learning, that's not to say that they don't deserve to get the work permit anyway, because of the due diligence they exercise and because of the fact that they are absolute and utter victims. So each case has to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, because all the facts are different. But many of the students fit the same pattern where their parents exhausted all their savings. So, I think that the cases are compelling. But at the end of the day, as you probably have experienced, when there are, you bring the case to the media, sometimes the immigration department does it forces them to do the right thing in a way.
Right. So I'd like to ask one more question. In fact, I have two more questions, last two questions. One is that how long do you think this case can go on for, and what could be the repercussions at the end of the day in case the students win? Well, repercussions for the college. What damage college could face? What sort of damage?
Well, in terms of how long it could take, we'd like to see it move as quickly as possible. It's hard to put hard and fast timelines. Class proceedings move notoriously slow traditionally, but this is one that is very well suited, in our view, to certification. The issues are very much the same for all the class members. They're common. The representations were made to everyone. So we would like to see this move along quickly. We hope to be certified within a a reasonable amount of time, hopefully within a year or so. And from there, who knows? And we'll also certainly need to see what the college's response is to the action and what efforts they want to take to try and potentially resolve some of the issues. So it's hard to say. Class proceedings in Ontario, though, have moved notoriously slow. But given the issues at stake here, we would like to see this move as quickly as possible. As far as impacts for Niagara College, I would think that there would be potentially a huge reputational impact. I would think that this would make it very difficult for them to market their international programs. There's also a potentially very significant financial impact for the college. So we would hope that they would have an incentive to try and help out class members and try and bring resolution as soon as possible and find a resolution that works for everybody.
Absolutely. So Stephen and Ravi, I'd like to ask you, in case students want to know more about this issue and they want to know the rules and the regulations, where should they look at? What are some of the things they need to keep in mind before they actually apply for any international program?
Well, and I mean, this is another positive, I think, outcome of this action that we're taking is that I think Niagara College has actually changed the program, so they don't actually offer it anymore as an online program. But in terms of contacting us, I mean, it's pretty easy to go to the Thomson Rogers website. Very soon, there's going to be a link on that website so affected students can join the class action because we want to know who they are. Obviously, if students have issues with respect to, falling out of status, getting refusals, wanting to do the humanitarian-based work permits, I mean, I'm happy to help with all of that. And again, my contact information is on Green and Spiegel's website. So, there's no issue contacting us. We want to find these students. We want to add them to the class. There's no cost to them. That's the way class actions work. There's basically they just sign up and they pay no fees whatsoever to the class action lawyers. And at the end of the day, if we win the case, then they're part of the settlement. So there's really no downside, as far as I can see, to the students joining the class action.
Sure. And one last question before we put the interview. It's just that Mr. Stephen and Ravi, would you like to give some tips to the students who are planning to come to Canada or are planning to join in the international programs? Because there are certain things that they need to keep in mind as far as talking to a lawyer, university, college, or immigration consultant is concerned.
Well, generally, my advice always used to be go to reputable colleges and universities. Understand that in India, private colleges are more reputable than public institutions, but in Canada, it's the opposite. So that was always my advice. Now, ironically, we're facing this issue with one of the public institutions, but that's why we're trying to do something about it. So I still think that, the advice has to be make sure they focus on public institutions. Obviously, they want to avoid distance learning programs. But the key thing I want to tell them is that, unfortunately, the government of Canada doesn't tell students that getting a one-year diploma is not really going to help them because they're only going to have a one-year work permit afterwards, and it's very difficult to qualify for immigration because most programs require that you have, 1 year of Canadian work experience to get the kind of points that you need. Even if it's federal skilled worker program or, certainly the Canada Experience class requires that. But when you're going to express entry, which is, the sort of the second step for immigration these days, having a whole year really helps. But how do you have a whole year when your work permit only lasts for exactly 1 year? So you got to give yourself some leeway and you got to give yourself some wiggle room. So I always say, even though the government doesn't tell you this, students should really look at 2-year programs because a 2-year program, generally speaking, will get you a 3-year open work permit. So, so those are some of the tips I would, and obviously they have to be careful and document their applications properly, show that they have the funds, show that their programs are a logical progression of what they studied in India and that it's not available in India, et cetera.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Yes, please, Stephen. Go ahead, please.
I would imagine that most students do their diligence and do their research. It's no small step to go to another country to study. And that at the end of the day, it's incumbent on the colleges to make sure what they're telling students is accurate because these students are taking such a big life step and putting so much trust in them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Stephen and Ravi, for giving us your precious time. We really appreciate all the information that you've given, and I'm pretty sure all our viewers will appreciate that information as well. And we really hope that these international students, in fact, everybody who has been denied work permit, should get justice at the end of the day.
We hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a very good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.